Welcome to Into the Fire, a Burning Coal Theatre Company podcast series.
Hi, this is Jerome Davis. I'm the artistic director of Burning Coal Theatre Company, and I'd like to welcome everyone to Into the Fire, the Burning Coal Theatre Company podcast series on all things theatrical. We have very special guests today. Joining Burning Coal this summer for the third year in a row are Time Flies Ayal Circus. The individuals involved are Ayal Prouser and Elliott Ghittelsohn. Gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for doing this again.
Thank you for having us.
So, Time Flies is an organization, right? You guys teach and you also perform sometimes. Can you talk, Ayal, talk a little bit about how the organization started, what the impulse was behind that, and where you are right now as an organization?
Yeah, Time Flies Circus is a fully mobile circus company. So we don't have any home base or anything like that, except for some storage in my parents' garage. And we're primarily circus education. So we go into schools, camps, theater camps, wise and set up circus programming. We bring all the equipment, send the coaches, the curriculum. So it's fairly turnkey, plug and play circus programming, I like to say. And then we do everything from coaching kids to put on shows. We put on what I call community shows, which is often like 3 or 4 artists at like more of a community center. And we also do full-blown professional circus shows. So it's kind of as the need comes up, we provide it in any kind of circus context. I started it in 2020. Like during the pandemic, I was like, here's an opportunity for me to get myself organized and like do all the background information, like all the background work to get the company up. And then 2021 was our first real season in summer. And now we're on our 3rd year. And this summer we're at 12 different camps, putting on something like 230 days of circus just over the summer.
This summer, so how many people work for you then? It's not just the 2 of you, I present.
No, certainly not. We have between 20 and 30 teaching artists and administrative staff working for us this year, including former Burning Coal intern Kendall is still doing our social media.
Nice, very nice. For those who are interested, timefliescircus.com is your website. You're based out of New York City, is that correct?
Yeah, most of our programming is between New York and New Jersey, but we have programs as far as North Carolina this summer, as well as California.
And Elliott Ghittelsohn, when did you come aboard? That must have been fairly early in the process.
Yeah, so I my first official project with Time Flies was the first STC at Burning Coal in 2021. We directed The Tempest. So Ayal and I met through a circus research seminar and became friends. And then he asked me to join on to this project because I have some background in clowning and some skills that Ayal doesn't have necessarily. So it's
I'm a very bad clown,
and I'm maybe a little better clown, but we'll see. And I also teach contortion and hand balancing and acrobatics and some aerial stuff that Ayal doesn't teach. So we're a good balance of skills.
When did you get interested in aerial and clowning, Elliott? Was that something that's, children do it by their nature, I think. If there's a rope, they'll swing on it. If there's a tree, they'll climb it. But is that when it started for you, or was this something that came into your life later on?
Well, I started doing circus camp when I was 12 years old. Circus Smirkus camp that's based up in Vermont. They're a youth circus troupe. So they have a summer camp and they also have a full-blown 10-week tour, which I never did the tour. I actually did the tour for a summer, and yeah, so I started circus camp from when I was 12 to 16. And then they opened a circus school in my hometown. So I went to high school until noon for my junior and senior year. And then I went to the circus school for the rest of the day.
Nice. Yeah.
I was in youth circus, and then I continued on. I went to Clown Conservatory in San Francisco, and I studied contortion. And then I performed as a contortionist and circus performer for about a decade before the pandemic sort of changed my career path.
Where was your hometown where you were able to study during your high school years? What town did you grow up in?
I grew up in Burlington, Vermont. The school no longer exists anymore, but Circus Smirkus does still exist. So they have summer camps, as well as the tour, and possibly some other programming that I'm not sure of. Mostly I'm in Philadelphia now.
Okay. Ayal, did you start that early, or is that something that came later to you?
I started juggling when I was like 11 years old, so about 20 years ago. And I always just loved circus, going to the circus. I lived in New York growing up, and Ringling Brothers was always there on spring break. So me and all my cousins, I was one of 7 cousins born in 7 years. So those poor parents had a lot of little ones running around at the same time. And we would all go to the circus on spring break. And I always loved the circus. And then, when I was like 11 years old or something, my mom came home with a Learn How to Juggle book. And she always joked it was the most expensive $5 she ever spent, because then I was just hooked. And similar story. I went to a circus day camp just on Long Island. And a guy there who kind of became my first mentor. And he taught me what he knew and found me other people and directed me towards Circus Smirkus. And I did the Circus Smirkus tour when I was 16. And then since then, I've kind of just been coaching and performing professionally as it comes up.
You have been fairly clear in defining Time Flies as not a theater, but you do theater frequently. Can you just talk a little bit about the distinction, Ayal, in your mind, or either of you, if you want to?
So in the last 40 to 50 years, there's been the rise of what's now called contemporary circus. And it means a number of different things to a number of different people. But the most succinct way I've heard it the most succinct way I've heard contemporary circus described is as the form of circus with the codes of theater and dance. So often most connected to post-dramatic theater is kind of using the form of circus, like using acrobatics, juggling, clown as its own kind of nuanced area in there, because that borders theater much more aggressively, but using circus skills to try to, I believe, convey more of an affect than an actual narrative. I don't believe in circus being used too mimetically. So it's not like I'm standing on a pyramid and I'm reaching my hand out because I'm longing for something. That's way too mimetic for me. The way I think about it is, if somebody is on a pyramid and it's a pyramid that is high up, it can cause you anxiety. And that anxiety is an affect that we can control, and we can then connect that to a narrative that we can pick up within either, if we're creating a circus show, we can kind of drive the narrative, or like I'm putting air quotes around narrative, even if you can't see it, or you can enter into a play and pick up on moments of anxiety, tension. Circus is very good for eroticism. Not that that's coming up in STC a whole lot, but like there's romance, what else could there be? Like stability, strength,
family
connection. So we can find these different affects that we can then tie together. If you have a strong control over acrobatic language or juggling language or clown language, then you can tie them together like the same as you can in a script. You can take sentences that each have a different feeling to create a paragraph, to create a book, to create a chapter, whatever. You can do the same thing to create an act, to create a show, to create a connection with the audience. And another fundamental aspect of contemporary circus, I believe, is kind of destabilizing or questioning or problematizing like the superhero in circus. So in traditional circus, not too often, I love traditional circus as well. Very often in traditional circus, you see an acrobat doing something that just feels so far away from you, so impossible. You see an acrobat do crazy flips, and you're like, I can never do that. That's a superhero feat.
Virtuosity.
Yeah, extreme virtuosity. With contemporary circus, I believe in maintaining a sense of virtuosity while bringing it down to the human, because bringing it down to a level that can be connected with, communicate with or receive communication from.
You don't want the audience to think of the acrobats as being those people over there. You want them to think of them as being these people in my community, or in other words, it's something that anyone could attain with the right focus and training. Is that fair?
Or a sense more so than worried about if they feel like they can pick up circus, which like is lovely as an educator, but not necessarily the driving force of the creation. It's more so that it's someone I can connect to on an intimate, interpersonal, artistic level. So I just would want to distinguish between those two.
Are there influences in your life, either of you? Are there people who have not necessarily people that you worked with or knew, but people whose work you had seen coming up, or was that a sort of a foreign art form prior to jumping into it?
I think for me, I was really inspired by some of the contemporary circus shows, like Cirque du Soleil is contemporary, I guess, and Cirque was the company that really drove me into pursuing this as an art form.
Cirque was their show Rain was the show that made me want to do circus professionally.
And part of what drew me to it was it had that side of virtuosity, but it also was the very human connection. And plus then they had like, it literally rained on stage. So that's like some great stage effects.
A good moment in Cirque that kind of gets you into from that show Rain is there's a very iconic moment where there's a female juggler who takes off a wig and then she's in the rain and she just juggles 3 wigs in the rain. And I don't even remember if she does any impressive juggling. I just remember her juggling 3 wigs and feeling it was such a vulnerable moment in the show that all she had to do was balance the vulnerability with the inherent narrative of juggling, and it was just stunning.
Yeah. It started with her getting her wig snatched off and her just the lighting change and the very vulnerable moment of a bald woman and then the juggling.
Yeah.
Where do you where would a moment like that come from? I assume you've worked involved in events or productions like that. Is that an idea that the director brings in the room? Is there a written script in the way that there often is in theater, or is it all devised over time? Where would an idea like that come from?
I feel like it depends on the company, and the work that we've been doing at STC is a little bit more in the theater realm. So, but I'd say it's a little bit more in the devised realm where, I think companies will have anywhere from like a month to 3-year development of a show. Mm-hmm. And, depending on the skills of the acrobats and the directors and whoever else is involved, it's all brought together and created. And, it's probably similar to theater. You do a workshop and then try it out and see how the audience responds, and then you add and change. But for instance, with Cats, we're directing Cats. The show is set, so we're fitting the circus skills into that show.
An example.
Cats will be, just to put in the plug real quick, will be the last Friday and Saturday in July, which is the 28th and 29th at 7 p.m. Tickets available at burningcoal.org. And anyway, Ayal, I interrupted you there.
No, I was going to say, from a lot of what I've done and heard about other people doing, is it's not often that you sit down and write a script. It's that sections have purposes, and you can say, I'm going to run this section, and then sections can be broken down into smaller sections, kind of with their own names. Because more often than not in contemporary circus, it's not that like, I'm going to do a trick and then you're going to applaud for me. That's where kind of the codes of dance come into it, that it's like, we're going to do this piece. So like I recently directed and like co-choreographed a show, and I was like, I want it to feel like it's coming together and going apart, coming together, going flowy, like almost like accordion hands or like an ocean going in and out. And that was where we started. And then we can break that up into smaller sections and say, so we're going to practice, like one section was called the By the Way, because the Red Hot Chili Peppers were playing when we first practiced it. But and I think that's very typical of the creative process.
I'm somewhat older than you, and so I had different influences growing up. But there were some clowns that were significant in all of the lives of people of my generation. I think I'm thinking particularly of Red Skelton, Dick Van Dyke, certainly very well established, and others too, much before me, Charlie Chaplin, people like that. But I noticed fairly early on that those clowns were also really good at tragedy, that it was very quick, easy to turn from one of those comedic moments into something much more serious and much more tragic. And I wonder if that's something you have felt working in the newer milieu of clowning today.
I think it kind of depends on the show. And of course, with any show, you want to have ups and downs, and it would be a very boring show if it was just, funny the whole way through. So for instance, with Rain, we were talking about Circus Rain, and the moment where Corinne Hagelin's wig is snatched off, and that's a very vulnerable moment for the audience and for her. And then she comes back and she's juggling the wigs, and it's a very joyous moment, and it brings it all around.
I think the great clowns, like the great cinematic clowns, also had a unique situation, or not a unique situation. I'm going to go back. I think with the great clowns, like the great cinematic clowns, a great thing that created in cinematic clowns that wasn't necessarily always available in circus clowns was the idea of the close-up. So it's harder to have a real tragic moment from an extreme distance, I believe. I mean, obviously in like theater and Greek theater, done from great distances, they've pulled off tragedies.
Text to support that too.
Yeah. But I think the idea of the close-up in cinema totally changed the ability of narrate, like the affect that one could harness and pull off. And I think in contemporary circus, there is this goal of the close-up, even if it's from a great circus distance. So when you're looking at, again, like one of my first languages is flying trapeze. And so I'm gonna use that as an example a lot. When you're looking at flying trapeze and you see someone doing a triple, you have this whole spectacle that you're trying to take in all at one time. I do work in contemporary flying trapeze, is what I like to call it, and we are trying to destabilize that and make it more intimate and smaller. But in a moment like having someone's wig taken off, even if you're seeing it from a distance, you're focusing on this tiny little element in circus. And even if it's not a literal close-up, even if you're seeing it from the same distance, it's a artistic, or like it's the same effective point of a close-up that you're honing in on one element. And it's kind of the same things that you see in certain types of dance, that you're like, even though the whole body is moving, all I want you to look at is a wrist, or all I want you to look at is a foot. And so like those are artistic close-ups that kind of can be harnessed into a tragic manner in a way that different than a whole spectacle can do. So I think that was a shift that cinema allowed, that is now happening in circus because of the same control that we aim for.
I think also the way that I tend to choreograph is really utilizing the music, and then later on in the process, the lighting, and that's with theater as well. But I really tend to, because I'm not typically using a lot of narrative in the circuses that I'm directing, or the acts that I'm directing, and so I really start with the music or the character. So because I went to clown school, I tend to, choose a character and try to find some influences, that the character is based off of, and then how does that, the body, how do they carry themselves, and then is there sound or lighting involved?
I think inherent. I come from more of a group acrobatics background. So whether it's partner acro, human pyramids, flying trapeze, there's inherent interpersonal performance going on.
Yeah, sure.
That you can't help but direct in different manners. Like you can have a happy performance, you can have a love performance, you can have a tragic, like all the things that happen interpersonally by nature, we can then use acrobatics to emphasis. Again, going back to the close-up as like a fundamental.
Do you look for that when you're putting together a group, or does it happen and then you deal with whatever happened, or some combination of those?
It depends on the group.
Yeah, I would say I look for the group more than the group for the narrative. So like I have, because I come from flying trapeze, a lot of people only look for the biggest tricks and that's all they're interested in. And like I'm looking for people who can also do big tricks, who can also do the performance that I want and are interested in, like, sometimes you have to do your most simple trick because that's what the choreography calls for. And if somebody only ever wants to do their biggest trick, I don't really have interest in creating with you. And then we then can create a show, and then it's who's the best for each part of the show will then kind of drive that.
I think in the process of creating Cats with STC, these are kids who signed up for a summer camp. And in this process, they auditioned for us through video. And then, so we got a sense of who they were through a 1-minute song, through video. And then we had, 1 day of working with them in person, testing out their acrobatic ability and movement qualities and some juggling abilities. And then we were able to cast a little closer. But this show is a little different because it has set characters. That's not typically the route that I'm used to working in.
Right. And I'm sure that there are shows in your world that have text, but for the whole cast to be singing as much as it is in this production, this is a sung through production. Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cats. Does that limit what you can do in the physical realm, or no?
Yeah. So we can talk a little bit about. Last year we were doing STC as well, and we did a production of Spoon River Anthology, and it's 100 monologues. We chose 50 of them, and we really broke down each monologue by choosing one trick and making it a really simple version of the one trick. So we had someone hanging from their ankles on the trapeze, reading a monologue upside down. Whereas in a trapeze act, that would be one little small moment. And so we took that moment, the really simple acrobatic trick, and then created a whole scene around that.
And what I would like to add as well is this is where I think circus is informed, contemporary circus is informed by dance in many ways, is right, like in some sense, right? I can't do my triple backflip while singing. I personally can't do a triple backflip to begin with, but let alone while singing. But if I can't do it while singing, then it's not the right choreography for the moment.
Right.
So like, yeah, in some ways, is acrobatics limited? Sure. But if that is, but it's not necessarily the acrobatics that are called for. And like, again, like Spoon River was real, like we not only picked like one trick or something to focus on, we picked up on one element of the monologue to really emphasize. So we had somebody walking on people's backs, like they were on all fours, like they're going to do like a field day pyramid, like you would do in field day as a kid, and somebody would walk across, and because we wanted to give the feeling of being unstable.
Yeah.
And that was just one feeling we wanted to go for, and he could do it while walking on backs. And so that made it the right choreography.
I remember that moment very clearly. Yeah, that was a great merger of a physical language and a textual language. We're running near the end of our interview. I always like to ask artists as a last question, what do you want to do? We've talked a lot about what you've done, where you started out. What do you want to do with the next 10 years of your life or whatever? How do you want to affect the world more so than you already have?
Actually, this work that we're doing here at Burning Coal STC has informed a lot of the work that I'm interested in pursuing. And this year I'm already directing 6 shows, including this one. So, and those are very different kind of shows. I'm doing a 20-minute act with 7 professional circus students that we're taking to a circus festival in France that we're creating from start to finish. It's a fully devised piece. And then I also work with a youth troupe and, so creating with different groups. And I really do enjoy using this theatrical circus realm and utilizing more narrative and storyline. That's something Ayal and I we have different views on, but I think that's a good partnership too, and you have different views. So yeah, directing is definitely where I want to move into.
Okay. And Ayal, what about you?
I guess for me, I'm also like hoping to become more of a show creator, not just performing and or coach. And for me, like artistically, like my passions are like, first, I would really love to bring flying trapeze more into the contemporary circus world. But like, I guess at the heart of that is really to like put out a care for acrobatic language and kind of get rid of this area of circus where you just take out one act and plug in another act. Because if the acrobatic choreography was set for a different show, chances are it's the wrong act for this show. But people are just like, I just want an aerial hoop act, and this is where they need to enter, this is where they need to exit.
Yeah.
But to make both artist and circus spectator have like a care and appreciation for true acrobatic language would be like a real mission, I guess.
Yeah, it would be like saying I want to do a play, so just grab the nearest script and start doing. That's a good. Just there's a script. Let's do that one.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. And like dance, you've spoken a lot about the symbiotic relationship between dance and the world of clowning and aerial gymnastics. Does age weigh on your mind, as I know it does with dancers as they pass their teens and 20s?
You mean us?
Yeah. Does it make you think, can I do this in another 20 years, or how can I continue to do this?
Yeah, I think, I don't necessarily speak for Ayal, but I think both of us are in our 30s and had and have long careers of performing. And for me, my body started, I'm a contortionist, so my body started to not want to do it as much as I was doing it. And just my priorities changed. And I think certain things get harder when you get older, but my retirement plan is clowning if I keep performing. So that's something you can always continue to do. I'd say juggling, you can always still do. Mm-hmm. And in a recreational sense, we both teach all ages. So I'm currently teaching at a school where I work with ages 8 to my oldest student is 65. And so I'd say there's limits, but it's person to person. It wouldn't necessarily be around the board.
Right.
For me, like, I feel like I had given up on performing for a while and like recently came back to like having a desire to create and perform. That said, flying trapeze, like your shoulders have, a limited time frame that you can really be on them. that said, I came off of like a hand injury a year ago, and I had my first experience of choreographing a contemporary flying trapeze piece that I was not a part of. And I guess I did that twice that year, and it was a very cool experience for me. And there were times I was like, I wish I could be the one up there, but also allowed me to see the full picture, like not on on a video. Yeah. That was very exciting and very exciting, very inspiring. And I do see a dream come true would be performing in like a recognized contemporary flying trapeze troupe, and a dream come true would be choreographing a contemporary flying trapeze troupe that I'm not performing in. Like I do see both. I do imagine flying trapeze being part of my life for a long, long time, but to what extent, I'm not sure, you know?
Yeah, I feel more inspired to give these gifts to other people at this point too, and pass on the joy that it's brought to my life. And the exploration that I've found through myself, I'm finding that more, that giving that to other people and having students grow in this form is way more fulfilling for me than doing it myself.
I think it's like part of your art. Like I say, like teaching is teaching as much as my art, as much as my performances or my choreography is.
And the fact that you've built that into your career early on, I think, is a really wise move. Ayal, Prouser, and Elliott Ghittelsohn from Time Flies Aerial Circus. Reminder that their website is timefliescircus.com, and we're working with them here at Burning Coal on our Summer Theatre Conservatory production of Cats by Andrew Lloyd Webber. And the performances, which anyone can come and see, is July 28th and 29th at 7 p.m. here at Burning Coal. Our website is burningcoal.org, and our phone number, if you'd like to call us, is 834-4001. Ayal and Elliott, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And we really, really look forward to seeing what you and this big group of kids have come up with for Cats.
And just, we can add this on, but we're also teaching a workshop at Burning Coal on Wednesday.
Yes. Very important. Yeah, I'm going to actually put that in at the front of this thing. So that happens on Wednesday the 18th. 19th. Sorry, Wednesday the 19th from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. And I believe that's the time, and the registration for that can happen at Burning Coal's website, which is burningcoal.org. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I appreciate it very, very much. And again, looking forward to Cats.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Take care. Cheers.
Thank you for listening. Join us for the Time Flies Circus Adult Workshop on July 19th at 6:30 p.m. by registering at burningcoal.org/adult-workshops or by giving us a call at 919-834-4001. You can also give us a call to purchase tickets for Cats, directed by Time Flies, on July 28th and 29th at 7 p.m. This is a family-friendly production. Again, that website is burningcoal.org.